All right, everybody, we are live. Welcome to episode 53 of FMA Discussion. Tonight we are featuring Master Kirk McCune, who is going to be sharing with us his journey in the Giron system. Welcome, sir. How are you?
I'm great, thank you. Aloha, everyone. Great to be here.
No, my pleasure. Having you on. There were a lot of people banging at the door that wanted to hear from you, and I told Mike, absolutely.
Well-known and historical figure, a true treasure for the Filipino martial arts. And Grandmaster Tony Somera is also right there. So, yeah, we're going to have a great time talking about those.
No. So this is the people are getting what they want. Give them what they want. Just I know briefly. So, are you teaching? I mean, each state's kind of different. But like, what's going on in your state current status?
We're locked down. I teach. I've been teaching some online classes. I've always taught. My main class is just at the house. The old traditional way. We train in the yard and in the garage. The problem that we've had is that many of the students, their own schools and they're trying to function with the lockdown with their businesses and things. And so it's been rough. Right now, it's mainly solo training. It's mainly online training. I've been trying to sneak and get some of the guys to pop over. We had talked about, we just had a little baby 9 months ago, and no one basically has seen my son. And that really...
Oh, that's special. Was that the terrorist you had
that was the negotiating with the terrorists that I was talking about. Yeah.
Oh my God. I thought when you initially said that, I was thinking maybe your significant other was babysitting or something. I had no idea you were referring to.
No, it's all true. Believe me, it's hard for me to believe too, but
that's fantastic.
Terrorist won, by the way.
That is so fantastic. Well, congrats. That's special.
But so we get the family over. We have to get the guys coming over and training. I mean, that's the beauty and the thing that's going to help us to deal with this harsh time right now is that we can be together and we can train. So we got to figure out some kind of way to do it. A lot of the guys are going ahead and going in the park, wearing their masks and doing what they have to do. I'm a little bit more isolated, because we've been traveling a lot, and
what city do you live? Where?
I live in Irvine, California,
and that's close to
Newport Beach and Costa Mesa, and it's south of Los Angeles.
Okay.
Orange County, California.
Okay.
It's nice, although it's been hot as Hades here.
Really? Recently. Yeah. I mean, but wow. Well, hopefully, at least you're doing. Hopefully, you guys will be back in business, and you can, have them coming over and, continue what you love to do. I mean, I know everybody's. I tell you, everybody's just. We're just not meant. Particularly us, martial arts. We got to be around others to train and have contact with.
None of us started martial arts because we were well-adjusted and well-adjusted people, right? We were looking for something.
Yeah, no, it's hopefully things. I don't know. Yeah, who knows? I don't even know if we can even put a time estimate. I don't know. It's just keep things.
We can't travel. We usually run 2 affiliate camps every year in Stockton. We've been doing it for years and years. They're awesome. People come from around the world to visit those camps, and they've been canceled. We host Gurdan in Asanto every year for a seminar in Stockton, and that had to be canceled, to protect Gurdan. The guys coming from Europe, they had to all cancel their tickets just for the October camp that's coming up. And we had something planned in, I think it was June, and we had a lot of guys. We were all going to go over there and have a camp because we have a new master in Germany, Frank Buchner, and we were going to go celebrate that and have a big camp in Europe, and we had to cancel all of that. So that's where we're at right now.
So then, well, again, I hope hopefully this is gonna like be behind us soon. One way or another.
In a way, it's interesting though, because the Filipino arts, even in the Philippines and what the history that I know of we've always been under duress. We've needed to practice secrecy. We've needed to practice, our art in times of war, which, it's very stressful right now. Physically, you need to watch your physical danger.
Yeah.
All the things are present now. So this is actually our time as Filipino martial artists. I mean, we're used to this.
To rise above. Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
going to rise above it. We're going to overcome it, just like we've
Yeah.
always. So
That's a good point. I mean, right. We're going to endure and we're used to challenges and,
yeah, it's our time.
rise to the occasion.
Our time it's just a little bit inconvenient. We got a little soft, I think, thinking that we're going to be able to do everything we want and not realizing that there's a lot of discontent in the world, and it's got to come out once in a while. And that's why we practice these arts, so that we'll be ready when those times come.
God forbid, what's going on
finds us, we can handle it. So
yeah, what's going on like in Portland? Good heavens. We got a bunch of people here just are saying hello and all that. Joyce Ramos, hey, Mike Torres, hey, Mike, I'm John, Guru Tom Pena, hey, Julius, hello, Audie, James Irwin, another Connecticut. All right, guys, hey, thank you for jumping in. If you got any questions, just list them and we'll definitely get to them. All right, so I guess, yeah, we're just going to jump into, again, hopefully things are gonna change for you guys there and all that. But what what was your first, not just getting into martial arts, but like what was your first FMA experience? Who, when, and where?
Probably I grew up in Hawaii, so
Hawaii.
in Hawaii, and probably my first experience was the local brothers beating my butt. So I think I learned that Filipino guys are pretty tough, so it was always something I was looking for.
So what was the style?
The style was playground ass whooping.
I was gonna say the style was beat on Kirk. No.
Yeah. Well, as far as this goes, I never trained in martial arts before. The only art that I have is Bahala. I trained a little bit with my father in Hawaii in Aikido, and I liked it, but I didn't stick with it that much. We like I said, we tend to move around a little bit, and so the first time I got into real martial arts was with Bahala. Before that, I grew up also in Arizona, so we would box and punch around with my buddies, and we were pretty outgoing redneck teenagers. So we would roughhouse. But as far as the martial arts, the Filipino arts, I loved the weapons, and I wanted to learn and understand the weapons. I was kind of running a little fast and loose in my life. I was going to places that I needed to know how not to get stabbed and found we're driving around, and we had decided that we wanted to become knife fighters, me and my buddies.
Oh my God.
and so we're driving around and what we thought that meant was that we put on some goggles and we got some rubber knives, and we basically went out in the backyard and we just boxed each other and punched each other out with the knife as a prop, right? And the way you won at my house in the backyard was that you pushed your opponent, you pushed his backside, you pushed his butt through the broken fence, and the dog next door would bite him. That was a win. That was the kill.
How old were you? What age?
I was in my 20s. Old enough to know better. But we were trying to learn to fight. We were doing, the UFC had just started coming out.
Oh, okay. So 93 thereabouts. Okay.
We were punching and kicking and wrestling and trying to work some jiu-jitsu. That guy would bring a little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah.
And we're driving in in Fullerton, California, and my buddy says, "Hey, look at that sign, Filipino martial arts." He says, "A Filipino guy will stab you. We should go there." And so we did, and, and that turned out to be a guy named Steve Tarani's school.
Lameko Steve?
Yeah. So he had just, and Gurdan,
Okay.
and he had just graduated under Leo Giron and Bahala. And so they were teaching Bahala in the school. And we went in, and it was an academy. So they were trying to get us to sign up, and we had been training on our own. And so they were trying to say, we got to pay, $50 for this, whatever. It's like, it's just like a health club. And I said, well, I don't go to health clubs. And I was going to leave. And a guy, Guru Mike Doctolero, who some people know as Chef Mike Doctolero, is an excellent chef. But he was teaching there. He was a recent graduate and guru under Grandmaster Giron. And he said, well, what do you like about this place? And I showed him an inside block, Bahala inside block, and a roof block that they had taught me. I said, that will work. I can make that work for real. In fact, I made that work last night, at the bar. And he said, well, that's Leo Giron. That's Bahala. And I was like, hey, man, you don't got to cuss me out. I didn't know what he was talking about. But he said, stick around. And he started to work with me and work with me. We eventually started training on our own in Mile Square Park.
Mm-hmm.
And then soon after that, I made the trip to Stockton. I met Leo Giron, which is a good story in itself. Meeting Leo Giron and training in the famous basement club of his house. And ever since that day, I have trained Bahala, and it's been the most important thing in my life, which I think a lot of the people that train in Bahala will know exactly what I'm talking about. That man, Guru David Hines, called it. Sitting next to Leo Giron, being next to Leo Giron is like sitting next to the sun. It was a wonderful experience.
Wow. So just to back up a bit, because this is getting fascinating. Is it fair to say this guy at the academy kind of saw something in you and kind of took you under his wing when he took you to the park and all that?
Yeah, he knew that I needed him. He knew that I needed this art. I was a young man looking for something honest in the world, and I believe that he saw that in me.
Yeah, I saw something genuine. Yeah,
and I saw the same in him and the art that he was promoting, and we've become lifelong friends. And it's I always say how lucky I was, but it was Grandmaster Giron who pointed out that rarely in these martial arts that are based on the blood spilled by our ancestors, by the people who came before us to bring us this art, things that happen to us are rarely based in luck. They're based in fate. They're based on he brought the spirit to it and maybe understand that I had to be there that day, that I had to do the things that I've done. And
sure.
We found each other, although we already knew each other.
That's fascinating. Okay, so now we're going to speed up a bit. So this guy takes you under his wing. Obviously, he's seeing something in you, and then it sounds like he kind of brings you up there to the Mecca / and this is in your first meeting with GM.
Yeah,
correct?
He encouraged us to go. There was a group of us, me, and then a group kind of followed me because I had gone in with a group, the group that was training, at my place. So we all kind of went and started training, but I was always there. A guy named Guru David Dizan, my training partner, was always there. It was us two. We're always there. Then there was a few other guys in and out. So one day I decided I'm going to go to Stockton and I'm going to go to the Saturday class and I'm going to train. So I do that. I drive to Southside Stockton and I go down 8th Street and I'm starting to look around. And I'm a white boy from, Orange County, California, and 8th Street is not that. 8th Street is different than that. And I'm thinking, whoa, there's a guy hitting the side of the 7-Eleven with a 2x4. And I go into the 7-Eleven to get a big gulp, and I tell the guy, hey man, there's a dude smashing the side, and you can hear it, smashing. I said, there's a guy. He's like, I know. And like that was it. Like that's what the guy's job or something, He smashed the side. So I finally find Grandmaster Giron's house, and I go up to the door, and I knock on the door, and there's no one there. I knock on the door, and there's no answer. So I'm thinking, oh crap, what am I gonna, am I at the right place? Whatever. So I'm looking. The door opens, and there's Leo Giron, Grandmaster Leo Giron, and I say, Grandmaster Giron, my name is Kirk McCune. My teacher is Mike Doctolero from Los Angeles, and he shuts the door in my face. And my heart, right, just sinks. I'm just like,
oh my God, here it is. You making this trek. You're all excited. You're going to, and boom.
Then the door opens, and he hands me the keys. He hands me the keys to the basement, and he says, please go down and unlock the door, and because everyone's going to be here, I'll be down in a minute.
Okay.
So he gives me the keys for the basement, the famous basement that I had read about, in Gurdon's books, and I had heard about as a legend. And I have the keys in my hand.
Wow.
And so I go trotting down there, right, with the keys, and I'm going to open the door, working on the door, and all of a sudden, this voice from behind me is like, hey, man, what are you doing there? And I was like, and I look up, and it's Grandmaster Tony Somera, and he thinks I'm breaking into the basement. So that's how, I met those two.
That's how you. Wow, that is.
I training. Everyone was super, welcoming, and Grandmaster Giron was there taking attendance, and I was able to talk to him. And Grandmaster Tony was teaching the class. I just hung in the back and tried to do, as best I could. I was a new student, and ended up taking the guys to lunch, taking Grandmaster Giron and Grandmaster Tony to lunch. And I drove back home.
So, wow. So on this first day, okay, I mean, you're going in there, you mentioned the basement. Just for the viewers who maybe are not familiar with, so is it just kind of like your run-the-mill basements? I mean, was it set up?
That's the thing that's funny. It's not a basement at all. It was the first floor of the house, but it wasn't an actual floor. It was more like they had raised the house because of flooding or something. So that basement area was like the first floor of the house, and then upstairs was the living area. Downstairs was the washer and dryer and those kind of things. But the ceiling, it may have been 6'5" maybe or less.
Oh, okay.
It was not tall. So when you were in there, the ceiling was right there. And so in a way, we always joke, because one of the traits and one of the characteristics of Bahala style is a low, strong, low stance that Grandmaster used in the jungles to be uphill or downhill and not, fall over. So,
rooted, yeah.
But on the ceiling was nothing but stick
marks. Yeah. Okay, so it's a whole open floor.
But there were pillars.
Oh, pillar. Okay.
Pillars too. So that there was stuff in the way, and so you always had to watch your footwork. It's like the area was not invented, but it was useful because it did all the things that we want to do. You had to watch your footwork and be conscious of your surroundings. It was crowded inside there, so you had to deal with a lot of chaos going on around you, and always you're dealing with multiple opponents, right? Just to not.
Yeah. It's like kind of built in, obstacles and kind of
terrain training, right there.
Mm-hmm. So now, Jim, I noticed your first class. So GM Tony is teaching. Is GM Giron just looking on, or just?
He's looking on, but he would get up, and if he saw something he didn't like, he'd come over and help you. And he was amazing at that. Anybody who's trained with Grandmaster Giron, back me up. He was the one person I've ever seen who could come over if you're struggling, whatever, or even if you're doing well, he could come over and he could move your shoulder or adjust your grip by millimeters, and all of a sudden you had it, and all of a sudden you look like a star. He could find that one thing that you needed and make you better. a wonderful teacher and so kind, always so much.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, I've never heard anything but, wonderful stuff about him, just from Burton, and,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
and just to your point, Grandmaster was probably 86 or 87 when I started training
And
with him,
at this time?
and he still had good movement. He had his faculties, very clear thinking.
Um,
I talked to him many times. I, and the talks with him were incredible because I don't know how to put this, but when I would speak with my grandfather, a lot of times he could talk to me about things that happened 50, 60 years before. But a lot of times he couldn't talk about, things that happened a week before or, days before. But Grandmaster Huron was not suffering from that. Had a knack for, as you talk to him, you want to learn about Grandmaster Leo Huron, right? You talk to him, and all of a sudden you realize you're telling him your life story. You were talking about your life last week. You were talking about what you had done at work, what you had done with your family. And the amazing thing that I always thought was that was so natural for him, and he actually cared about what you were saying about it. And I always learned so much from that because he cared about us as students. And through that caring, he was able to give over his art. And he wasn't just preaching and being he was letting us be part of his life.
yeah.
Part of our life. And that's how we learn. And there's the beginning and the core of the family feeling of Bahala and our training.
Because it resonated from him. Right. Just, going back to that setting, what year? Okay, so you mentioned at that time he was in his late 80s. So, what year did you start?
Well, I think I started. I was trying to think back. I remember maybe 96.
Because he actually passed
97.
2002.
He died in 2001.
2001. Okay.
Because it was soon for the 9/11 stuff.
Oh, okay. So, all right. So, circa 96, 97 is kind of when you started. So now, okay. So, how many? What was the frequency as far as the classes? How many times a week?
Their classes up there, I believe they trained 2 or 3 times a week. There was always class on Saturdays. We went, but it's Stockton, right? So we started going, but like my friend David Dizon, I talked about David Dizon, a very important figure in Bahala. David Dizon was the man that Grandmaster Tony said that David Dizon was the person who taught him how to be a friend. And we lost David in 2006. He died of cancer. So these memories are very. There's a treasure for me. When me and him would go up there, the thing is that we would drive up and we would train together. The other guys were friendly, but they wouldn't really train with us. It wasn't until a few years later that we had been going that I met Master Joel Juanitas in a seminar in Arizona. We had decided that wherever Grandmaster Tony went or Grandmaster Huron went on a seminar, if we could drive to it, we would go to it.
Oh, you guys would just jump in the car. Okay.
Jump in the car and go, no matter where it was. If we could do it, if it was possible to drive to it, we would do it.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were obviously you're younger, and it sounds like you're single.
We didn't have nothing else to do back then. It
was right. No attachment.
So I met Master Joel in Arizona, in Phoenix, and I remember talking to him outside. He's having a cigarette, and I went outside. I said, "Hey, man, thanks for the seminar. I love what I'm learning." And he's kind of just sitting there looking. And I said, "This is my neighborhood. This is where I grew up. It's my school over there where I grew up. And this is this and this." He's like, so he's like, goes inside, right? But the next time, I tell you what, the next time that we went to Stockton, it was a totally different scene. everyone was trying to help us. Everyone was trying to train with us. So
Okay.
Master Joel is my senior in the art. He's my brother. And the only reason I was successful in Bahala was thanks to, in a lot of ways, to Master Joel. So that's the way it was up there. It's very cliquish, very clannish, but friendly. I don't want to misdescribe it, but you know, these guys all grew up together. We're outsiders coming in.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, yeah. So
a lot of groups there in Stockton would not teach outsiders. Grandmaster Ron happened to not be that person. He wanted to teach any good person
that came along, regardless.
So
yeah. It sounds like, you know, and I heard that he was kind of a trendsetter. Just to back up a bit, when you're as far as you, I know you're traveling to Stockton. Like, how far was it? How far was the ride from where you were living?
It's 6.5 hours.
Wow. So what was the frequency that you were making it up there?
We would go up. We would try to go up once a month. Once we started getting into it, when we got down for graduation, we traveled up there every week for 7 weeks.
Okay. So then, when you weren't going there once a week, safe to say you were just working the material with your buddies and all that.
Yeah, we had a group. We had a group down in Orange County that we would and we were lucky because we had 2 instructors and a graduate student that worked with us down here.
So fantastic. Okay.
Included some senior guys, and you know, then as I got into it, I was going to Stockton. And me and Grandmaster Tony, as far as being together and traveling, there was 10 years we were either in Stockton or on the road, you know, to seminar probably twice a month, and I was in Stockton maybe 2 or 3 times a month.
Wow. Okay. So, all right. So you're going up there once a week in the class setting and all that. So it sounds like over time you're kind of getting accepted. You know, I mean, they're kind of warming up to you.
In those days, we were close. It was a good experience. It was, you know, we were a lot, like you say, younger, and it was. Well, I probably should shut up. It was a good time and great training, very intense training, and necessary. We needed it. We were respectable people, but maybe not the best. I don't know, citizens.
So in other words, you guys had good intentions, but you needed this.
Yeah, we loved each other, and we loved Grandmaster Giron, so we never want to let him down.
Okay, so that's what I'm going to get to next. Okay, so you're in this famous basement, which sounds like it's a first floor, open floor. You got pillars. You got to be cautious of your whereabouts, where you're training, what have you. What, you know, take us, if you can remember, just for the audience, like a class, you know, like what took place in class. Was there a warm up? Were you heavy drilling?
The traditional way that the artist taught, the methodology of Grandmaster Giron. You start from the beginning and you work the basic fundamentals constantly. And what's that phrase, you know, that being advanced is doing the basics, you know, perfectly.
We have that like in KI. It's like there is no advance. It's mastering the basics. You know what I mean?
Well, I understand that because the bladed arts are definitely how much skill do you really need to have to cut someone with a bolo? Your will is going to do a lot to get it.
Yeah, good point.
Untrained people kill people with knives and
all the time.
Objects all the time. So you know what we're doing is not that far removed from that, and the discipline that we gain is more about doing it on purpose than being able to do it.
Right. So, No, so
we'd have warm up. It would go warm up. We would have formal feeds. There was a way that we need to address each other, the language of Bahala that we all speak. That's the angles that we're going to be attacking. There's a written curriculum in the base art that you learn called Difondo. It's the art that we all learn. It's the teaching. It's called Estilo Entablado. It's the teaching and learning art, the battlefield art of Bahala. That's the hardest one to learn, and that's the one we learn first.
The Fondo. Okay.
So
Okay.
we have the warm up, the formal feeds. We have a line drill that works on skill sets of striking and movement, and then you usually go into working your techniques from the list. There's off the angle, like say angle one. There's certain techniques that are based off angle one, depending on where your weapon is at the time.
Mm.
And to fight many people at the same time, it's always about fighting multiple opponents. Right? Your opponent's always going to be better armed than you, and there's always going to be more than one. There's a philosophy in Grandmaster Giron. So then we would work our sheet. And then towards the end of class, there would usually be some sort of demonstration or some application of one of the important lessons that you may have learned in class. Grandmaster Tony may give us a drill, or we may spar, something like that. And that's it. And then we usually have a barbecue afterwards.
I always hear about that.
Awesome.
I hear that's like up there. Like that was like just always part of it. Like
yeah, everyone would cook, and
yeah.
Grandmaster Giron's house was right by the Leonario del Trabajo Grand Lodge. In fact, his house at that time was owned by the lodge, and something that we need to talk about is his relationship to the Filipino lodge. Grandmaster Giron was the supreme minister of the Filipino lodge, the Leonarios del Trabajo, for over 70 years. There's a misconception that Bahala, because Grandmaster Giron used it in the war very effectively during the war, that Bahala, the art form of Bahala, is based on military structure. It's not. It's based on the lodge structure. For instance, that's why there's three masters. In the lodge, there's a grandmaster, and the supreme minister are at the same level.
Okay.
Underneath the grandmaster are three masters. So Grandmaster Giron made an exception because he wanted to make certain that his wishes were carried forward with Grandmaster Tony. So he promoted Grandmaster Tony, but really there's one grandmaster, that's Grandmaster Giron, and he earned that in the war. And now there'll be masters until someone else does something similar to what Grandmaster Giron does. But anyways, the important thing is that the structure of the lodge was that familiar feeling of where the people who were in the lodge, the Filipino lodge, they did not have, during its heyday, they did not have the protection of the law. They weren't able to own property. There are many problems with the Filipinos that were coming over to try and immigrate to the United States, make a better life for themselves. But within the lodge, they could do all of those things. The lodge could do it as a national and international organization, could have money, and so you were married in the lodge, where a lot of times some of the businesses wouldn't marry you, wouldn't allow you to be married in Stockton.
Okay.
Fascinating history. But as far as the training goes, a lot of the lodge members would come by, and they would bring food, cook for us, and come by and talk. And a lot of the older guys would show us some tips and techniques. And the yard guys are here outside. They show us some techniques, and it was such a great experience. And I learned, if any of those old guys from Stockton ask you, how long have you been doing this? You tell them, I'm just beginning. Today is my first day. Because
that way they want to check you out.
And another thing, you don't want to say to those guys, let's play. The common thing that we say, because if you tell them let's play, they think of that as like a challenge, and they'll really get on you. What you ask them to do is say, Manong, can you demonstrate for me the technique?
Oh, so demonstrate, not play. Okay.
And I learned that from this scar right here.
Oh no! All right, we got to hear about this now. Okay.
But so that's what was going on, and his house and the lodge were right next door, and it was it's important to understand that, because so much of understanding Bahala is based within the structure and the importance of the lodge in Grandmaster Giron's life. The reason that Grandmaster Tony was promoted, Grandmaster Giron was the sponsor of Grandmaster Tony in the lodge. They were lodge brothers. They were both
This is
30.
all new. Fascinating. I
And
had no idea about this lodge and the association to Bahala.
in the lodge, when Grandmaster Giron was starting to step down, he said that Tony Somera was the one that spoke for him. That's something that you can do in the lodge, and that's not really a secret, so I can tell you. A lot of things I can't tell you, or what do they say, right? But so it makes sense that as he was building, let me put it this way. As the lodge was so important to Grandmaster Giron, he saw that as the Filipinos became more and more successful as being Americans, where it comes to a point now that any Filipino living in America, a citizen, has been born here or naturalized here, they're equal and accepted as Americans just like anyone else. And the value of the lodge has become less and less. I think me and we're DJ, our guys, we're lodge members, but we're some of the very youngest ones.
Yeah.
And I think that what, the Bahala Martial Arts Association, which is the umbrella that our art is placed under, was Grandmaster Giron's attempt to bring the best of the lodge fraternity and the family feeling, the positive ability to work together, to learn how to do business together and to find compromise together. It was his way of trying to put that forward for the younger generation. And he added his art to it to preserve that legacy, but also to give us something in common, to give us something to do. I always say that the self-defense of our art, I mean, who goes around with a sword? Well, me, but normal people.
Yeah.
We walk around with a sword. Yeah, we all carry knives, and we can deal with knives. We carry knives. But our world is based in guns, right? We train in firearms, but we don't teach firearms. But the self-defense part is the mentality, the mindset that comes from the art, and it's our ability to train together. If we're training together, we're not out doing something else that we shouldn't be doing.
Good.
If we're eating lunch together at a barbecue, we're not off doing something that we shouldn't be doing.
Correct.
And become close with each other, and you realize, hey, I have to back you up as my brother in this art. If you do something stupid, I'm going to have to back you up, whether it's right or wrong. We tend not to do things that are wrong. And I always see that is the self-defense aspect that's actually valuable from our art, that that we all want to access. And that comes from the lodge, the feeling of the lodge, where they were looking out for each other in a very dangerous times for the Filipinos.
How fascinating. I tell you, this is the first I'm ever hearing about this. And it totally makes sense. As they became more and more prominent in America, the lodge would have less significance. You know what I mean? But it's just fascinating what it did for
a lot of traditions. The traditions of the lodge, the Filipino lodge, were based from the Katipunan, had carried on through into the lodge. And our rituals, our graduation rituals, different things that we do are also based on those ancient ceremonies that were conducted by the Katipunan and were conducted in the lodge. And we keep those things alive. Guru Danana Santo talks about it in his graduation ceremony. Well, he'll explain how they use the candles, the importance of the candles to keep the light alive, that they had to train under candlelight in secrets from the Spanish. And so we do that. We do that every graduation, where we've graduated, hundreds of warriors through that. That's our warrior ceremony.
You guys continue that. Oh, that's fantastic. Here, we got some new people, Master Kirk. They're saying hello. Julius, Tuan, Jack, good to have you. Joel, Jose Giron.
Here, Jose.
Paul, hey Paul, thanks for jumping in. Guru Dave Hines, thank you. And Jack, Frozen. We shouldn't be frozen anymore. Maybe I just wasn't moving, Tuan Jack. I might have. So good to hear the value system taught and why. Yeah, absolutely. Much agreed. Wow. So, all right. That, I mean, I'm so glad you shared that. I had like no idea the
Yeah,
significance.
everyone knows Gurdan and Asanto. Well, they may not know that Gurdan's mother actually trained in Bahala,
I
trained
had
at
no
least.
idea.
So
Wow.
it's for men, it's for women. It was very common for after the lodge meetings for the men to go upstairs. They would place a guard at the door, and they would train Escrima upstairs while the ladies were downstairs playing cards.
No kidding.
The reason that Gurdan came and trained with Grandmaster Giron was because his mom was in the lodge, and she asked him, she said, "Hey, Leo, I hear that you know the real Escrima. I want you to teach Danny." And Grandmaster Giron said, "I don't know what you're talking about, but I know a guy who knows." And he tried to send Gurdan in Asanto to a man named Joe Pakpako. Joe Pakpako was a left-handed escrimador who played the Largamano style like Grandmaster Giron. That was Grandmaster Giron's training partner.
No.
And he was a guy who ran the asparagus gangs, the guys who would pick asparagus. Gurdan's father and mother they would cook lunches, and they would have a boarding house that housed the workers, the field workers. That's how they were involved in trucking. So Joe Pakpako was involved in that also. But Grandmaster Giron said that this man, Joe Pakpako, the left-handed Largamano man, was the best escrimador that he knew, with some high praise. And he said, if you want to learn Escrima, go and train with Joe Pakpako. Well, Gurdan had other ideas, so they still wanted to, and they came the next week and started their training with Grandmaster Giron. And that was because of the relationship with
his mother,
mom, and Giron. It's amazing to me that these connections, which, and especially with Gurdan, is so important, because I believe that without Gurdan, we would not have the understanding of the Filipino arts in this country.
Oh, no, I mean,
we have now. So those things, we can't forget. And it was important for that generation, Joe Pakpako, Grandmaster Giron. They weren't just idly practicing their martial art. They needed that art. They probably they figured they were going to have to fight that day. If they were out in the field, a lot of the arguments were settled. The asparagus picker gangs, they call it asparagus gangs. There was the work crews, were normally set up by different towns, certainly different bars. They were set up by different islands. So a lot of the Filipino people at that time didn't really consider themselves the same people. They had their compadres, and then there was other people. And so there was arguments where they would be picking the asparagus, cutting the asparagus, and the guys, one group of Visayans would get ahead, and they'd be like, "Look at those punk Ilocanos over there. They can't cut asparagus." And then get to the end of the row, and there would be a fight. And they would fight with asparagus knives. And then in town, they had to fight the racism and the police and each other, just like any sort of migrant working area.
Amazing.
They needed the arts. They needed the arts. And, guys were well known to walk around with a newspaper. Well, inside that newspaper, the rolled up newspaper, a butcher knife or a bolo.
Right. The
suits were cut extra wide on one side of the arm so that a machete could go inside.
No kidding. My God. Wow. So, I don't even know where to go back to. This is so fascinating. Definitely, I hope you're okay with a part 2, because
I can't talk about these guys enough. That I know that there's so much love for the Filipino arts right now. And Leo Giron, Grandmaster Tony Somera, they are trendsetters. They did something that is so difficult to do. As anyone who practices the art tries to spread their art, first of all, no one wants to train in it because it looks kind of scary. Most people want to do some kind of cardio kickboxing or something, or at the best, they want to do MMA. That makes a lot of sense to them. For me, that didn't really do it for me. I felt like I was going to get stabbed. I felt like I was going to get
Yeah,
shot.
it did for me. I've done a lot of MMA, like BJJ. I've done, and I still do. I still have an appreciation, but it does not really get me out of bed like FMA. I mean,
This was answering those kind of questions for me. I was feeling that, okay, I'm going to see that coming. I'm going to understand what that means when that person is moving in a certain way, and their attitude towards me, that mindset thing, and then we're building the skill set that's going to have us succeed in those situations. I mean, so much of it is. I remember talking to Grandmaster Giron. I'm such an idiot. I'm telling him, GM, I just want to kick ass. I don't want to take shit from nobody. And he's just laughing, right? Because he knew, and what I realized is that you got to take crap basically from everybody. All you can do is evade and try to be a good person and not let people get.
Yeah, not let it stick on you. Yeah.
Because now with a little bit of training in the Filipino arts, especially if you're using blades, a little bit of training, now you're actually a dangerous person. You can really hurt people, and that's a responsibility.
No. Offensively speaking, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, a few vital targets, and yeah, no. I mean, absolutely.
It's so easy to do wrong with this knowledge, and that's why it's so important to have that family feeling, that family background where you are being responsible, learning how to be a leader, learning how to be an inspiration to others, and. We had that problem. They talk about the Filipino gangs. Bahala Na is a gang. There's a gang named Bahala Na. So from day one, Grandmaster Giron was fighting that battle of Filipinos who may have someone have a bad opinion of them. I think they're criminals or something at his time period. And then the name Bahala Na. Well, the name Bahala Na for him came from World War II. That was the slogan of his 978th Signal Service Company. Bahala Na, the 2nd Filipino Infantry. Bahala Na.
Actually,
and said, hey, I had it first, and Bahala Na is not for us. Bahala Na is for the men that fought for our country and didn't make it. We remember them by saying Bahala Na. And so he would give that over to a gang or some criminals. There was many times when we would go to do demos. And the guy would get up on the mic and he'd say, yeah, well, the Bahala Na gang is here for some reason. I don't know. Here they are. And Grandmaster Giron would have to run up there and say, no, it's the Bahala Na Martial Arts Club. We're
that's a gang
organization. We are, working for the community, and this is the martial we do, and it do the whole story, and it just goes on to this day.
A bunch of hoodlums or whatever. I do have a question though regarding what you mentioned, as far as the regiments, and I think this is a better time than none to ask it. One of the questions we have it's from Romeo Bravo. Thank you, Romeo, for the question. As far as the teaching to the 1st and 2nd regiments, was it all GM Giron teaching?
No. So Grandmaster Giron was in the 2nd Filipino Infantry. There was a 1st Filipino Infantry. And this was done by an act of Congress to allow the Filipinos to join the military. At a certain point, they were not allowed to join. There was some law that kept them from joining up into the military, a Chinese exclusion law or something. Guru David Hines would be the person to talk about that history. But there was some problem, and then it was changed by an act of Congress. And they created the 1st Filipino Infantry, and so many men joined up. Just like Grandmaster Giron said, hey, the Philippines is my home, and I'm going to go fight for my country to rescue my home. And so there were so many people in the 1st Filipino Infantry that they made the 2nd. And they called them, and he was in the 978 Signal Service Corps, so he was a radio operator. That's what they were doing, and why he was a commando in the Philippines is that they were spying on the Japanese, and they would radio back to position. So when they would make that radio call, the Japanese would triangulate their position, and they would all come and get there's a bounty out for them. They knew the Americans were there, but they didn't know where they were. So they would try to capture them, and there was a 500 peso or whatever bounty on their heads. So they had to watch out for traders. They had to watch out for the indigenous people, and for the Japanese catching them. And that's where a lot of the Bolo fighting went down. But to answer Guru's question, Grandmaster Giron had trained under his teachers, but before he had not trained specifically with bolo fighting, with bladed fighting. He had trained mainly with sticks and other normal training martial arts. So he went in just as any other person and did his basic training. And when they got there, and they did some bolo training in the bolo brigades in the 1st and 2nd Filipino Infantry in basic training, very basic slash and thrust deflections, basic training with the bolos. And there's an issue bolo. Guru Mike Ruby has a authentic example of one of the bolos. They're a heavy U.S. Army. I don't know how you could even swing it, especially one of the smaller Filipinos. That is a ton. But that was issued to these bolo brigades because they knew that they were going to have to do jungle fighting. So they needed something. So that was happening already. And there were teachers that were teaching the regiments. Grandmaster Giron was a recruit. He was an inductee. And so he was not teaching. And where he learned his art and where his art was honed was by a man named Benigno Ramos, Sergeant Benigno Ramos. Sergeant Ramos was an orderly who was assigned to Sergeant Leo Giron in the field, in the jungle. And this was after, this was when he was deployed. Sergeant Ramos was assigned as an orderly. Sergeant Ramos was in the Philippine Army. He was not in the U.S. Army. And he was the one who fought with the 36-inch Talanasan blade that Grandmaster Giron is famous for, the long blade. Long knife. I have the example of it here. I don't know if I can
fantastic. Okay.
Let me just pop back here.
Sure.
If I can catch it. I don't know if I can see that.
Look at that. That is long.
So the normal bolo was what we call the Kalashaw, and that was about 24, 26
26, right? Okay.
And they also had the Army issue machete, right? They also had the Army issue machete. So you can see that there's a light, flexible, fast, lovely weapon when you use it.
36 inches, huh? Jeez.
So that's what the 978 Signal Corps guys had those. The long.
All of them had that.
They all had that. It's an interesting thing about the Talanasan. The Talanasan blade, Grandmaster Giron said everyone had it during the war. And there's some ideas that the length was an answer to the Japanese wanting to use their katanas, which was a little bit longer. And there's a lot of the Japanese soldiers that paid a heavy price for thinking that, they were first of all dealing, if they saw Filipino, they had no respect for the Filipino people. The Japanese officers wanted to get out there and take trophies and take heads they considered themselves samurai. And so that was one of the reasons why there was a sword engagement. But to get back to Sergeant Ramos, orderly in the Philippine Army that was assigned to Grandmaster Giron, and they were from northern Luzon. They were from the Pangasinan area. The longer weapons are very much known. All those guys are Largamano guys. Joe Pakpako from Pangasinan, you'd give him a 28-inch stick, and he'd be like, what is that? It's like a toy. You give him a 30-inch stick, 36-inch stick, and you see the light in his eyes go on, and he's like, I can make this work. I could whoop somebody with this. It's just a different mentality that they have. So what happened was there was an engagement. In fact, they were dropped off on the submarine, the Stingray, dropped them off, and that first night, they ended up being, as they were bringing there's so much story about Grandmaster Giron getting even onto the Philippines. They had been depth charged in the submarine. Grandmaster Giron is sleeping on the crates of ammunition, and there's depth charges going on all over. And he said he got a little bit nervous, but he looked at the captain, and the captain winked at him. And so he said, well, I guess we're going to be okay. The captain's winking at me. And he went to sleep. So they came in and they raised the submarine up. They drug a line, a cable to the shore, and then they took in all their equipment. While they were taking in their equipment, a Japanese column showed up, and they fought them. And the 978th guys, they killed this group with the help of some of the local villagers. And then they hid the bodies in the jungle, and then they packed up their stuff and headed into the jungle. So the fighting started right away.
As soon as they got off, okay.
As the teaching started, I mean, they were in combat. So they were using, the setup was the long Talanasan sword was strapped underneath his arm, where it came out of a sheath that opened in the front like a clam, so that the whole sword would come out at once. He had the Kalasha, the short blade, on his left side so that he could draw it left or right-handed. He had his K-bar knife. He had his 45. He had his carbine, and then all his radio equipment, which he said weighed 75 pounds.
Jeez.
And then all their equipment. And then they had some of the rebel fighters were helping them, and they had local guys that were carrying a lot of the equipment. And they got into a fight, and there was the Japanese were rushing in, swinging their swords, jumping around, screaming like crazy. And the Filipino fighters were sitting back, spitting their tobacco, chewing their tobacco, and fighting from a strong position, what we call fondo fuerte. Well, one of the Japanese rushed in and swung at Grandmaster Roan's stomach, and it freaked him out. And he jumped backwards and he fell into a ditch, and the Japanese was coming to finish him off, and Sergeant Ramos killed that guy and grabbed Grandmaster Roan and brought him up, and they continued the fight. Well, Grandmaster Roan had been cut across the stomach, but it only opened up his fatigues, and it didn't touch his skin. It cut his shirt, but it didn't touch his skin, which is funny, because I was watching Braveheart with Grandmaster Huron one time, and there's scenes in the battle where heads are coming up above the flying off, and the guys are getting their arms chopped off, and he's like, see, that's what I was telling you about. That's what it looks like. And he says, and then there's a part where they're fighting, and somebody cut somebody's clothes, and he's like, that's bullshit. If you get cut, if the sword touches you, it will cut to the bone. And I said, well, you got cut across the stomach. Why didn't it cut you? And he says, oh, we're not talking about me.
Anybody else, they would be done.
But I mean, so Sergeant Ramos takes him back to camp, and he says, "Sir, your mission is more important than me or anything else. This is, you must survive. You must understand." He says, "You have the skills, you have the basic knowledge, but you're not used to the blade. You need to practice and see the blade flashing across your face to get used to it. And I'll tell you the other secret. Your opponent, the Japanese, you're afraid of him, but he's afraid of you. And now you know that, you don't have to be afraid. So I'm going to work with you, and I'm going to train you in the use of the bolo." And so they started having training sessions in camp where they would work on their skill sets of using the long Talanasan blade. And they would have bets where you'd think, okay, if I get you, you got to pay me. No, it was Sergeant Ramos would say, if you get me, if you nick me, because Grandmaster Ramos would be like, well, what if, because they're using real live bolos, right? And they're going, because he's like, you got to learn. You got to learn. You got to train hard. And Sergeant Ramos would play with no shoes. He would fight with no shoes. And Grandmaster Roan said, well, what if I cut you? And he says, sir, I am a professional escrimador. I teach, before the war, I taught Escrima for a living, by living. And I've been doing this a long time. He said, if I don't want you to cut me, you won't cut me. And he said that if you nick me, I'll give you a month's pay. And so Leo's like, all right. And he said
Oh,
he could never collect because of the distance of the Largamano and how fast Sergeant Ramos was. So Sergeant Ramos, Benigno Ramos, was actually Grandmaster Giron's teacher that solidified his knowledge of the blade, and they did it on the battlefield.
right.
You know,
Well, I tell you, you know what? And I'm speaking for myself here, you know, and there could be others that I mean, I was always under the impression he had this long extended tutelage pre-war. Like he went into the war like this seasoned, you know, wow, that is fascinating.
well, he had 5 instructors, Grandmaster Giron, in his life, which is unheard of because in the Philippines, to have one instructor, a lot of times then no one else will teach you. But he had 2 or 3 in the Philippines, and then he came and met Sergeant Ramos, and he had one more back on the States. And the thing about Sergeant Ramos is interesting, and I'd like to put this out there for anyone. We don't know what style, we don't know any students other than Grandmaster Giron that this Sergeant Ramos has.
First time I ever hear about the guy.
I don't know. It seems like we would be able to figure it out. And I've tried to look, you know, most of Grandmaster Giron's records are in the Library of Congress. We have his reports from the field. That's where a lot of our information has come from, is his actual military reports. And Sergeant Ramos, we can't figure out where. And I started thinking, this is just me, I started thinking that Sergeant Ramos was a metaphor for something else, for Grandmaster Giron maybe not wanting to say that he taught himself or what. But,
so you're thinking that, like,
I don't think that's true. I don't think that's true now because of some other information that I've learned. And then there's one real exciting sort of thing. We have weapons from Grandmaster Giron and from Grandmaster Tony's collections. One of the weapons is a Talanasan blade that has the initials carved in it, BR.
BR.
And it's got a big handle. If you notice that this handle of Grandmaster Giron, this was a replica of his sword. His swords were broken. His swords were broken in the war. Most of the swords were, and it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know, how many fingers are you supposed to have, right? But it's so that you can adjust your grip different places. Well, this other one that we have is very big, and it only has 4 spaces, and it's heavy blade. And Benigno Ramos was known as being a very big Filipino, and we're trying to figure and date this sword and see if it's possible that it could have been his.
How fast?
They were custom made. The Talanasons were custom made for the guys. We use a weapon called a garrote. It's made of bahi wood.
Okay,
It's a palm. And a lot of times if the sword was broken, I was trying to explain this the other day to somebody that most of the swords that we have now were not in combat because swords get broken in combat. I mean, we train to not bang the swords together, but you know, if guys slashing here and there, there's chaos all around. Stuff happens. Hit it on a rock, whatever. Sure. And so that's just something about the Talanasan is that Grandmaster Giron said everyone had them, everybody had them, but we have never been able to find an existing one from the time period. Tuhan Harley Elmore and his brothers from Sayak Kali have done an extensive research going to the Smithsonian and looking at the blades, measuring them, touching maybe, I don't know, 5,000 blades. And what they found from the area of World War II and the Pangasinan region are katanas that have been rehandled with a handle that looks like this, but it's got a katana blade. But
so you're thinking maybe
katana. But obviously they were making out of the broken katanas, they were making Talanasan swords at a certain point, and so those have survived. Where Grandmaster Giron said that his Talanasan had broken, and we met it, and because we couldn't figure out why we can't find them, and they're usually about 30 inches instead of 36 inches. We have not found one that's 36 inches. That's a hard blade to bladesmith. You know, that's a long blade to keep
That's a
straight.
long, no, 36. Yeah, yeah.
But what we met was a man who said, yeah, my dad fought in the war. And it was true. The Talanasan, everybody had the Talanasan. But they didn't have it before World War II, and they didn't have it after World War II. It was something specific to the time. And if they were well used, and so we're thinking that maybe the existing original ones, you know, they got destroyed in combat.
They didn't make it. I mean, which I guess is certainly feasible. You know what's so funny though? This is the first time I'm hearing that sword being so prevalent in use. It was always the bolo. You heard about the bolo battalions, the bolo. Like,
well, where I seen it in the media is there's a John Wayne movie that was hella great, really great movie about that time period. And are they going to show Talanasan's hard to get on screen? Talanasan's hard to understand. Did they talk to guys that actually fought there, or did they talk to?
Yeah, no. That
had a stake in. The bolo is not necessarily from the Pagnacanon region where Grandmaster Hiron was fighting. I'm talking about northern Luzon, Pagnacanon, where Grandmaster Hiron fought. That's his barrio is there where he was born, and that was where he was fighting. And one of the reasons why he was chosen to go there and directed there by direct order that was given to him by the general, what's his name, MacArthur, actually got his orders from MacArthur saying, you boys, you can go where a general can't go. You're going to be my eyes and ears, and we're going to go back and we're going to recapture our home. Told him that in an inspirational speech that Grandmaster Hiron talked about many times. So to answer those questions, the teaching was done, organized in the Bolo Battalion in a basic training, and then it was done as necessary in the field by the older, experienced veterans, and the way it has always been done. The older guys that have lived and survived the fight will teach the younger guys how to do it, and then they take over. It's the classic way that we learn these warrior arts. We didn't think this stuff up.
No, it's just fascinating. Like Jeff Cruz, on-the-job training. Yeah, literally. Book memories. Wow, I'm gonna have to get that. I didn't realize that. Okay, we're coming up on. Wow, this flew by. We're definitely going to do. Are you good for a part 2 Thursday?
What time is it? Oh hell yeah! Sure, we can do something.
No, I insist. If you are from, because we haven't even got into. I mean, I still got a little more time, but I just kind of want to prep the audience per se, and you as well. If
I tell you, like I said before, like we were talking about the other day, I really, really value and appreciate what you're trying to do, what you are doing to promote the community. Bahala, we definitely want to be part of it as much as we can. You know, we're going to support our brothers and sisters in these arts. We're the only ones that care about this. More people need to know about it and need to care about it. If everyone trained in Escrima, our world would not have the problems that it has.
You know that? Think about that. Yeah, agreed. Right. You know what I mean? Like, we should become the world leaders.
Hell yeah. I mean, what are our values that we promote?
There you go. Exactly. We should be
family,
the world leaders.
Family. We promote. Remembering history. You know, we promote positive interactions. We promote manners.
No, all the above. You're Master Kirk, your 3/4 of your screen is green. This is at first. Is I'm the only one seeing this, or is anybody else?
Mine looks clear on my side.
Yeah, no. It could be just me. This is a first, but nobody else is saying anything. So I'm thinking we're fine. The one thing I tell you, all right. So are you good for Thursday at 7?
Yeah, same time. Yeah.
No, okay, because like I said, I haven't gotten into like. I know there were some swords made that certain people got a part of, that were numbered. I wanted to get into that. Fan. What's that?
This is number 24.
You got number 24. You got number 24.
There was 25 made.
Yeah,
The
that's right.
owner won as payment. Grandmaster Giron, Grandmaster Tony were buried with their swords, and a few guys got lucky and got the sword that Grandmaster Giron said this was exactly what I used in the war. So,
That's crazy.
yeah, we can talk about
Because what I had, that's incredible. Because I definitely heard some people like I know, like David Gould got one. My Lameko teacher.
Oh,
So obviously Master Aron must have felt something pretty special about him to get one, and obviously yourself. So I know I definitely heard there was 25. So yeah, I want to get into that. And then the fan, the styles within the style. We haven't even talked about your Tony Somera and your relationship with him. Obviously, that but this has been wow. This has been phenomenal. I'm so good on you. I'm glad we went your route. That was a good play. You know? But yeah, definitely number two. Guru Hind, Guru Dave. Thursday at 7, we're going to be getting Master Kirk back on. Absolutely, for sure. But yeah, this is he's poking out with excitement. Yeah, we are in, bro. But wow, there's just the comments on here are wow. Yeah,
I appreciate people tuning in. Like I said, I love talking about Bahala. I think that anyone who's training in the Filipino martial arts, they need to know about Leo Giron. The story of Grandmaster Tony Somera is a great story. Also, they were able to take an art from the barrio, from the little town of Stockton, California, and present it to the world. And this Bahala, his art, Grandmaster Giron's art, is being trained all over the world, in Germany, in Italy, in Ireland, in Spain. It's gone back to Spain, and we walked on the in Madrid, and we go to a little alleyway, and the Spaniards are saying something in Spanish, right? Which I don't understand. But what they were saying is there's blood on these stones, on the cobblestones. That was original street from Madrid, and what they were talking about is that all the fencing schools, which they call Escrima,
yeah, that's right.
all the fencing schools were on that street, and so the guys would duel and fight in the street. And that street was called Caldecoto. And Caldecoto had a street sign, and on the street sign it was the iron fist of a suit of armor, the iron glove of a suit of armor. Wow. Do you know what the iron glove of a suit of armor is called in Spanish? And for the Spaniard, it's called arnis de mano.
Arnis de mano.
So to have that connection, Grandmaster Giron calling Arnis Escrima, for Grandmaster Giron, Arnis is fighting in war. It cannot be practiced. It cannot be duplicated. It is a unique experience in actual battle, Arnis. And then we have Escrima, which is the skirmish line, which is practicing to fight. And why he called Giron Arnis Escrima. The Arnis is always first. And so there we're learning, we go and see Arnis de mano on the street in Spanish, where we're learning from the Spanish soldiers who, there's stories that even Guru dance, we tell the stories that we practice in secret and that the dances are secret. Well, it's, but we were trying to fool trained soldiers. There was no more powerful army than the Spanish at the time when these arts were being created.
Think about it. Look at they were conquering the world. I mean, obviously they were.
They had conquered.
They were a monster.
So we get to Arnis de Mano. We go to Toledo, Spain, and we talk to a guy who's a sword maker, the last real sword makers in Toledo, and he's got cut off fingers, and the guy's tool maker is a badass, and we're wearing our Bahala shirts, and we come in and he says, "Hey, Escrima, I do Escrima," and he was talking about Spanish fencing, and we talked about swords. So the beauty and the understanding of a man, Grandmaster Leo Giron, who fought with a sword against other warriors in war, is unheard of, unmatched, and we all need to know that story. And his art is there for anyone to explore. And I'm so thankful to have the chance to have the audience to talk about him. And
oh my God, we're the ones that are thankful. This is amazing, and what's amazing is that there's gonna be a part two to this amazing stuff, which I cannot wait to get into. Like again, more on the 25 swords that were issued, the fan, the styles within the style. Obviously, GM Tony, your relationship with him obviously had to be something special. Obviously, we need to hear about that. What you're doing. I definitely want to get your take on what you're promoting and all that. And yeah, so there's gonna be. I'm really excited for part two, and I want to thank you so much for coming on. And I want to thank you again for agreeing to Thursday, because I know this is taking time away from you, newborn and what have you. You know,
it's an escape. I'll send you the money later.
Yeah.
Nah, he's a joy, and the lockdown has been in that way has been wonderful, because we're gonna be here as a family and enjoy each other's company. So that's been awesome.
Yeah. Obviously, there's always something good to find out. You know what I mean? Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, sir, Master Kirk, thank you so much, and Thursday it is.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you. All right, folks. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Definitely need for another one Thursday. I want to thank everybody who submitted questions. If I didn't get to your question, I will absolutely get it to some of them. Just they weren't like Tuan Jack. We'll definitely get to that Thursday. See what he's come out to the East Coast or is planning to come out. What else? There was another question regarding, which I have here, that was from James Irwin. I haven't forgot you, buddy. Definitely going to get your question. Anybody else who wants to submit questions from now to Thursday, please do. The best thing to do at this point would be private message me and all that. But if you have a question, I would definitely send me it. I mean, this stuff is freaking gold. So yeah, and thank you for all the comments and all that, and yeah, unbelievable history stuff that I never realized about the lodge, those swords, and WW2 from the Luzon area and all that. So just wealth of information goes without saying. So, all right, folks, I will see you. Thanks for tuning in. If you haven't, please hit like, subscribe to FMA Discussion on YouTube, and more to come Thursday. See you all then.